Okay. Hopefully you can see something that's titled Southwest District of Kiwanis Mid-Year Education Conference.
Yeah.
Ah, thank you.
Yep, you got it. Woohoo.
Wish me luck. Here we go. Let's talk a little bit about this. This is kind of a free form thing, so if you have questions, please just jump in and ask. Generally speaking, most Kiwanis clubs have two businesses that they run. One is the club, and one is their foundation. The club basically takes care of membership and projects and meetings and things of that nature. And the service account or the foundation side of the house takes care of the charitable activities, and so on. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So distinguishing how to determine which one you're talking about or where money needs to go or where money needs to come from is always a little bit difficult. And I put this document together to try to help explain how that works, explain how you can understand it a little bit better, and see what you think about that. And then hopefully it'll bring up some questions that you might have. So let's go through this just a little bit at a time, because I think the highlights of it probably are worth doing. So here, let's go through some definitions first and talk about what an admin account is. An admin account, basically, for any Kiwanis club is the bank account where your Kiwanis club stores any of its unspent money and pays for any of its expenses from the club's perspective. It, generally speaking, will be a smaller activity and smaller usage than your foundation account or your service account or whatever you call it. A service account is the bank account, in essence, where your Kiwanis Foundation stores all of its unspent money and it pays all of its expenses for its charitable purposes. Can they exist as one account? Yes, they can. They shouldn't, probably. I think everything that Kiwanis says is you should keep those as separate. In theory, every club has separate directors for each of these two different things. In reality, almost nobody does, because there aren't enough people who will say yes when you ask them to do it. So oftentimes it's the same people managing the two different sides of the business. At the very least, your accounting system that you keep needs to be able to distinguish the difference between the two. And we'll go into a little bit more of that here in just a minute. Every single Kiwanis club was formed initially under the IRS rules in their section 501c4. Well, what does that mean? Well, a 501c4 type business is a social, according to the IRS, is a social welfare organization that is nonprofit, and it operates like a service club or a similar organization. Well, Kiwanis is a service club. And so we certainly qualify in that regard. And everybody's Kiwanis club, their admin side is a 501c4. What does it do? It promotes the common good and the general welfare in the community. That's a definition the IRS uses. And it is prohibited from engaging primarily in political activity. And so if you're doing a lot of that, you need to get away from it. Contributions that are made to a 501c4 organization are never tax deductible by the donor. You can't control what a donor does in the first place, but you cannot tell them that any donations that are made to your club can be written off on their tax returns, because they can't. And so how does that make a difference then when it comes to the service account or the foundation side? Well, every club foundation, and most clubs do have one, not all do, but most do. Every club foundation, your service account per se, should be formed under IRS section 501c3. And that differs from the 501c4 in a couple of very significant ways. It's still a not-for-profit organization, but rather than being a social welfare organization. Its primary purpose is either charitable, religious, educational, scientific, literary, or the prevention of cruelty to children or animals, and a couple of other specific categories. And you can look that up in the IRS pages that you can find on any computer. It's still a nonprofit entity, but with a dedicated mission, one of those categories up there. And any donations made to a 501c3 are tax deductible for the donor. So if you have someone that gives you $1,000 or $10,000, they'll be able to write that off on their income taxes. And it would be very, very nice if somebody gives you money like that, you write them a thank you note at the very least and say thanks for your donation to our purpose, our foundation. Here's how we're going to use that. And they can perhaps use that as a way of documenting their charitable donation on their income tax returns. And so it's a significant difference between what the club can do and what your service account or foundation side can do. Well, let's look a little deeper here on what an admin account can do. Typically, an admin account is used for collection of dues. And so when you're going through the dues cycle in September, October, you're bringing in money, it should go into your admin account. And when you pay the bill back to Kiwanis International, it should come out of the admin account. Some clubs, including the Albuquerque club that I'm a part of, we sometimes split things, some of our costs between the administrative functions and the service side, because of things where we use stuff from each and we can get money a little easier sometimes from the service account. We don't keep a whole lot in our admin account. So at any rate, the admin account is basically for anything that you're just running the business kinds of things, your day-to-day things. If your club is paying for the meals at a hotel, as an example, you would probably run that money that you collect from the people that are paying you. Maybe they're paying it every time they come. Maybe they pay it on a monthly basis, but you run that through your admin account and you pay the hotel or the restaurant or whoever you're meeting, wherever you're meeting, you pay them out of that admin account also. That's generally the kinds of things that the admin side would do. The service accounts, the foundation side, will do a whole lot more. Any money that you have coming in on the work that you're performing or the projects that you're doing out in the community should be probably coming into and out of the service accounts. Any donations that you receive, any grants or other gifts that come in because the donor might be expecting to write it off on their own income taxes, if it's significant enough that they want a receipt, you should give it. You should make sure that it is given, and you run it through the 501c3 side of the business, the service accounts. One of the differences, one of the things that a lot of people don't recognize, I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is that every Kiwanis club, in theory at least, runs two different organizations. They're two different businesses. They're two different taxpayer identification numbers. You and I have Social Security numbers that tie us to the IRS. Businesses have employee identification numbers, EINs, that tie them to the IRS. And so the club itself, the 501c4, has a EIN. Your foundation or your service side is a different business that has a different EIN, and it qualified as such as a not-for-profit 501c3 when it was set up. And so you need to keep those things separate in that regard. And again, Kiwanis recommends that you keep separate bank accounts. Kiwanis recommends that you have separate checking accounts. Not all clubs do that. They're typically the small ones that don't. But you should be doing that. It makes the accounting and the bookkeeping so much easier if you keep it separate right from the very beginning. And that's the general gist of the difference between the two. So what I'd like to do is I would like to hear from any of you if you have any questions about any of this or anything that you've experienced that might vary from this significantly. I'll try to answer them best I can without getting myself in trouble. I see I've got an attorney watching me. I'm sorry, he's a past attorney. And he reminds me of that every time I say that. But if anybody has any questions, unmute yourself and speak up.
Jim, Bob Reidenbach here.
Hi, Bob.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing great.
Good. Okay, we have a foundation, and one of the line items on it that we have for expenditures is Key Club support. Okay, and we make money available to help Key Clubbers go to like the Key Club Decon. And we've been doing that. We haven't ever had any question about it, and it comes out of our foundation for that. And do you think that's proper?
Is that, yeah, thank you for putting a question mark at the end of all that. I think you're doing exactly what most people do.
Mhm.
Most clubs that have any amount of money want to try to help support their key clubs and the other organizations that they're closely tied to. Generally speaking, I would say that if the money that went into that foundation account, you earned it in some way, maybe you sold beer at the ballpark, maybe you ran Zozobra in Santa Fe, maybe you ran the Balloon Fiesta in Albuquerque, maybe you did something somewhere to earn a lot of money.
Sold hot dogs.
Sold hot dogs at the ballpark or wherever. Maybe you had a pancake breakfast. Maybe you did any one of the thousands of things that we do to try to earn a few bucks.
Mhm.
That money now you can spend in your charitable purposes any way you want to, and your Key Club kids certainly should qualify as a legitimate expenditure out of that. And I would say that's appropriate that it's a foundation kind of a thing. It doesn't prevent your club, the club admin side, from supporting them also.
Mhm.
But it's far more likely that you have money sitting in your foundation side than you do in your club account.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Come on,
Jim,
Steve.
Jim,
Yes.
Art had a question in chat, and he mentioned that he's never heard that we needed a second EIN. So should we be applying for this?
Who'd you get that from, Mary?
Art Fessler.
I don't know the specific situation that they may be referring to. Most clubs already have two, should have two. If you don't have one, you're one of the few. And if you don't have one, it's almost certainly the foundation side or the service side that you do not have. Getting a 501c4 designation for a Kiwanis club is a very standard function, and it happens when the club is formed. And so it almost certainly exists. A foundation is something that should be done probably near the time that the club is formed, but it may actually come sometime later. And if you don't have a foundation, in essence, you don't have a service account. And so you cannot convey tax deductibility to anybody. And here's where that will hurt you. I see it all the time where somebody has a significant donation that a large corporation wants to give to whatever their cause might be. And it doesn't matter whether it's in Sedona or Tucson or who knows, doesn't matter. If it's Walmart, as an example, Walmart is going to look it up, and they have ways to do that pretty easily. And they're going to look to see if you are a 501, a legitimate 501c3, because Walmart or a grocery store or any other major corporation would love to help you and love to support you, but they don't necessarily want to do it without being able to write that donation off as part of their charitable purposes of their own during the course of the year.
Yeah.
And the only way they can do that is to ensure that you have a 501c3 or service side, a foundation side to you. And they will donate it to that, not to your club. Unfortunately, we tend to use the same name in our club and our club foundation. And so it's a lot of confusion for a lot of people. But that's where they're looking for the thing. And usually the check will be written out to whatever the name of your club foundation is. It may, they run the gamut of different things. So I don't know whether to tell you you need something or not, or I don't know how to answer that question.
Okay. Well, Art has another question. He's from Apache Junction. I'll just go ahead and read it. Do we need to ask Ken or who to help us obtain the second EIN?
Well, one moment, please.
Good questions.
Remember this? Can you see Camp Kiwanis now?
Yes.
Okay, this is a presentation I put together a couple of years ago for exactly that. This was something where we were actually getting together at wherever, I don't remember. And let me just kind of point out a couple of things here. There are really three groups of these things. There are Kiwanis clubs and their foundations. There are districts and district foundations. And there's Kiwanis International and Kiwanis International foundations. At Kiwanis International, they call it the Children's Fund these days. Well, if I go into that thing, I knew a little bit of history about all that stuff, but I don't want to really focus on that. Let's take a look at Southwest District. In essence, the Southwest District Kiwanis Foundation is the organization that Bob Breidenbach is the current president for, and I'm the treasurer for. And we have our own officers and directors, and they are not the same people as Southwest District, where Ken Garley is the executive director. And we have a governor and a governing board made up of lieutenant governors that watch over the Southwest District. So we're two entities there. Your Kiwanis Club then has those same two kinds of things. Well, your charitable foundation, your service account is a 501c3, and it has all of these characteristics, as I said earlier. And if you need to form one, this is how you go about it. You have to have bylaws. So you have to start by having bylaws, and people generally pretty much copy the standard issued Kiwanis Club bylaws because they deal with all the same issues. You have to decide who your officers will be and how many you'll have. Then you have to get an employee identification number from the IRS. You have to file with your Secretary of State or your Corporation Commission in Arizona. You've got to get an identity from your state. You've got to file your initial reports. You've got to have board meeting minutes before you can even open a bank account. Your bank won't let you open an account without them. And then you're going to need all that stuff before you go do that. And then you've got to notify the Southwest District legal advisor for for this if you want to be attached to the Southwest District Foundation. Or you can go it alone and you can apply for that 501c3 status through the IRS, and you can wait and wait and wait and wait. And so those are the steps that you would go through to create, to get your own 501c3 status, Mary.
Okay.
And so these are things that I've got that I brought up just in case something like that came up. Thank you for bringing it up. But anyway, I've got all those steps written down. And so if somebody needs to do that, we can get back and go do that.
Okay.
Anybody else have a question?
Jim, this is Phil. For those who might have been in Kiwanis more recently, a historical observance may be helpful. Way back when Kiwanis clubs were first started, they all had service accounts and admin accounts. That was it. It was sort of donated to Kiwanis, was everybody assumed was donated to a charity. Over the years, though, the IRS has gotten more particular on how they handle 501c3s versus 501c4s. So as a result of that, most of the Kiwanis clubs I know went to that extra step, and they formed a foundation, gave it a related name. Like ours, my club is Valley of the Sun Camelback Club. Our foundation is the Valley of the Sun Camelback Community Welfare Foundation. So we use a similar name, but we use a different name. Our club is incorporated under Arizona law. The foundation is a trust that we formed, so it has trustees. It doesn't have a board, and basically we run both separately. They both have their EINs. We're lucky to have a CPA as a member, and they take care of filing the taxes each year. But basically, that's how we come to this dichotomy where you have an admin account and a service account, which is no longer really a service account, it's a foundation, because that's the only way the IRS will recognize it as a charity.
Right.
And so a lot of clubs, they have admin accounts now, but their other account is really their foundation account, and they run two separate checking accounts for each. So that's sort of a historical how we got to where we are, and why we're saying that you really need to have the two entities, the club and then the club foundation.
Yeah, one of the issues that I see with that some people may not be aware of is that just like in your personal life, about this time of the year, you have to report to the IRS what you've made and send them money or hope to get some back from them if you're lucky. A business has the same responsibility. Now, a nonprofit business, on the other hand, doesn't pay income taxes, but the IRS still wants to hear from you each year, and they want to hear how much money you brought in and how much money you spent and how many assets you have and what they're worth and those kinds of things. But if you don't exceed some rather large thresholds, most of the clubs here in the Southwest District can do the one-page short form, maybe even online these days, tax form to just get it done and be done with it. And so it's still an obligation for you to do that. If you fail to file for 3 years in a row, the IRS might come and step on you a little bit, like they've stepped on me. So it's just still an obligation. Now, our fiscal year happens to be October 1st through September 30th, which means that our tax deadline usually is a little earlier, because I think it's February the 15th is our typical tax deadline for every Kiwanis club, because we're all on the same administrative year. And so those things tend to need to be done by February the 15th, or get an extension if you need to. So good point, Phil. Thank you for the history. Anybody else? Steve, you must have a question.
Oh, Jim, you've answered them all.
Oh yeah, I did. Come on.
So yeah, I'll make one up.
Okay,
Uh, in the past, I thought, and maybe you alluded to this a minute ago, that clubs who did not want to, maybe they're just small clubs with limited resources, did not want to start a separate foundation. Could they not piggyback on the Southwest District Foundation in some way? Or
you
do
know,
you
that's,
want to get into that? Or are we changing that point of view?
Steve, you asked a really good question. I appreciate
You
it.
asked for it.
You did, and it's one I have a little bit of experience with. I've been up and down the path with that one too. We have a couple of clubs that I'm aware of that only run the club as a single entity. And they don't have lots of money that comes in, and I doubt that they're able to convey any sort of tax deductibility to any donors because they may not have enough significant donations that they even treat it that way. So they run a 501c4 club. But we have had many organizations ask to piggyback on the Southwest District Foundation, in particular key clubs and so on, who do not have their own 501c3. And part of it's because they're constantly changing the administration of key clubs and so on, but they just don't have that. And it seems so simple to just tag onto and use the EIN number for someone else. But first time I was asked that question when I had already allowed a single transaction to occur, I found out that I shouldn't have done that. It's just not kosher. It's not part of the way the thing works. And so no, everybody either has their own or they don't have one. And if they don't have one, they're never going to get any significant donations from any company that might like to donate to them. Because my experience, they always check. They always look it up to see if you are in good standing and if you have that 501c3 out there that they can point to and copy and attach to their paperwork and turn it into their accounting office. And so I hope that answered your question, Steve. I can't take others. Now, the IRS does allow something that's a little different than you would think, and that is a provision that was made many years ago for allowing these Kiwanis clubs to attach to us, to the Southwest District Kiwanis Foundation. But they still have to qualify on their own right. They still have to have an EIN number. They still have to do all the dollars and cents themselves, not through someone else. They simply, once they have everything in line, those clubs simply ask to be attached to the Southwest District Kiwanis Foundation, and they become subordinate organizations to us. And we list them as such with an annual filing to the IRS. But they still have all the requirements that they would have otherwise. They still have to do everything that they would do if they were independent. They just don't have to wait for approval.
Thanks for clearing that up, Jim.
Scott, you haven't raised your hand yet.
I don't have any questions. I'm just listening. And my old club in Casa Grande was one of those that only has one account. But I had stepped down when I retired in 2020 from Casa Grande. So the Dreamcatchers, I know we just have this single account right now too. So
Well, I know of one here in Albuquerque that's that way. There may be others, but it's up to the clubs themselves. They're each their own business. And if they want to do it that way, that's up to them.
Jim, this is Don Seavey in Los Alamos. What
Yeah.
is the status now of the Southwest District's 501c3?
Oh, thank you, Don. As many of you know, we started receiving letters from the IRS dated May the 1st of last year, saying that they had revoked the 501c3 status of the Southwest District Kiwanis Foundation. And it took us a while to figure out what had happened. And we finally got to the bottom of it, took care of the problem by sending the IRS the things that they did not have. And then we've waited and waited and waited. And the most encouraging thing that I've had since then is I received a letter from the IRS on, well, it was back in December. In fact, I keep it right here close to my heart. I don't think I can get that on the camera. Why is that not working on the camera? That's interesting. Anyway, I've got a letter from the IRS dated oh, this is not the right one. It was dated December the 1st, and I got it the week before Christmas. And it said, we have received all your information and we have determined that we need 60 more days to make a determination in what you've sent us. And so I said, well, if they dated that December the 1st, you could take December and January, and by February the 1st, we ought to be maybe hearing something from them. Well, here it is March the 8th, and I still haven't heard anything more. So Don, I don't know anything new. Anybody else? David and Patty, I haven't heard you say anything yet. I see you though.
We've just been overwhelmed by your awesome presentation.
It was very good, and I just wanted Steve to know that I was here. He'll be proud of me.
Dave is a professional at being able to say things like that.
Is that a compliment or not?
Yeah, you take it any way you want to. Amy, how about you? Any questions?
No, I'm just kind of learning the whole thing. I just started last year in February with the Queen Creek Kiwanis, and then they talked me into being the secretary this year. So I'm really overwhelmed. But I know that we do have an admin fund, and we do have the service fund, and I know that we're going to try to start a fundraising committee to see if we can boost up our admin account, because I think there's some stuff that we want to do, but we can't use it out of the service account. I'm not sure what that is yet, but once I get on the committee, it'll be interesting to see. I know that we started, I think there's a place called Pro M, which you can go and do events, and then they'll pay you for it, and then they'll just pay the Kiwanis for it. So it's like, traffic and like selling hot dogs at the ball game. So yeah, I'm just kind of learning everything. So this has been a fun week. I've been following Mary around. She's been in every one I've been in. I'm like, dang,
Jerry Whaling's still in the Queen Creek Club, isn't he?
Oh yeah, Jerry is.
Yeah.
He's my
he knows how to
mentor.
do most of this stuff pretty well.
Yeah, I want to suck his brain, all of his information.
Yeah.
He's a plethora of info.
Yes,
Oh
he
my
is.
goodness.
Yeah, and he wants to retire. I'm like, why?
No. Amy, being a secretary, you're going to learn a lot that way. That's one of the most important jobs in any club.
Oh, I am. I am. And
you'll learn a lot.
I've really kind of, because everybody's so busy too, and like the monthly reports, I really want to try to find some good training for that. I don't know if there's like YouTube things out there or whatever, just to get like a little bit better with that. And then of course with Portal Buzz going away, that's been like a huge thing too. So we've been trying to figure out what website we're going to use from that as well.
Yeah. Well, you can always get a hold of any of our representatives at KI. Jerry would know who they would be, and ask them if you can have more training. And they can probably send something directly to you. to help you
Yeah.
out with that, because it's not an easy job. It's a very good job though, because you learn a lot and you're
Yes.
responsible for a lot over there. I know I've
That's
been
the
a
scary part.
secretary a couple of times. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. It's not hard. You know, you just need to just, go one thing at a time and you'll learn
Yeah.
from it. And it's really not, like I said, it's not hard. I think anybody can do it, but people are afraid. That's the
Yeah, it's
problem
because
over
it's a
there.
lot.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is, but you're on top of everything. You're the one that's going to tell the president of your club what's going on and this and that, because you're going to know more than
Right.
the president does, because you're responsible. But it's okay. It's okay. So don't worry. Don't be afraid. But like I said, ask Jerry, and he can probably direct you to Vicky.
Yes.
Vicky Hermanson. There's people that are in charge of our division, our district out here, and they can
Mhm.
probably send you some recordings
Tutorials or something.
Yeah, to help you out over there.
Yeah, because you do it a couple of times and then you're like,
Mhm.
okay, there was so much that I did for training. Let me see it again. So I'm like, then you pick up a little bit more and a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you'll learn as time goes on. You'll learn. You'll pick things up, and once you get the basics in there, you just go each month in and just kind
Right.
of bring things up to date. And
Yep.
it's real simple. It's nothing to it. So
Yeah.
don't let it worry you. Don't let it make you afraid. Okay. If I can do it, you can do it.
Okay,
Believe me.
perfect.
And then there's Jerry.
Yeah, as soon as you learn how to do it, somebody's going to ask you to do a presentation like this to everybody else.
Oh, where have I
That's
heard
why
that
have
before?
good notes. I take good notes.
Yeah, that's okay. It's a
I
a
got-
learning thing.
I got just an FYI. We went, Patty and I went tonight to a fish fry. And it just so happens we sat down and sat next to Alma and Carson and her husband, Bob.
Where in the world are you?
What?
Where are you?
Where are we? We're at Albuquerque at a Methodist church, I guess it was.
Is there fish fry at St. John's
And you
Methodist?
ran into Bob and Alma at the
They
here
were
in Albuquerque?
Yeah, we were in, yeah.
A good friend of mine, it's her brother is Bob.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Bob, my brother.
okay.
So anyway, we were there and we got, okay, well, it was interesting. And said, well, I gotta go now because I gotta go watch Jim Sowers show off.
They said hello to you.
Well,
Oh,
that's nice.
that's cool.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Who-
But I
who'd
thought it
have
was
thought?
kind of interesting, just out of the,
Yeah,
Talk
well,
about
their son
coincidences.
lives. Yeah, their son lives down the road from me, and they come out here once in a while to see him.
oh, is that right?
Oh.
Yeah.
They get around.
Well, he's in Silver City.
No, well, Brian, I think his name's
Oh,
Brian.
okay, Brian.
Yeah, he's a pastor of a church out here, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm looking around the room here, and I see a name up here, Ron Faulkner from Sierra Vista. I haven't heard anything from you yet this evening. Have you got a question?
No, Jim, I've listened. The only thing I had a question, and y'all talked about it, was the EIN and with the district. I remember recall that was a problem with, or at least an issue with us, and I'm going to go back and check with our leaders next week in our meeting. But I appreciate being able to be here tonight and seeing and listening to all of you. Thank you.
Certainly. This is a topic that is real easy, but often very, very confusing. Because you think of it one way and then you think of it a different way, and the answer changes. And so just think it through, and it's fairly easy. What do we do for service? It's over on the service side. Well, what is service? Then you get into all those definitions of, it depends on what the definition of the word is. So you just never know. Think through it and get somebody that you can bounce some ideas off of. And I think two heads are sometimes better than one when it comes to that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Jim, I just brought up our latest tax return or form here for the Chandler Club. And I've been treasurer there for quite a while. The form that for a small, foundation is called a 990N is in November.
Right.
That's for receipts of $50,000 or less. And you just get on the IRS website and you can just do it right there on the IRS website. And
Yeah.
I've done that for years and very, very highly suggest. Now you have until February 15th to do this, but it's a whole lot easier if you do it prior to December 31st. Because then you got to really dig in there somehow to get the proper form up. Because for instance, you just your fiscal year that just ended, we would have used the 2022 forms, not the 2023. Because it was a 2022 to 2023 year.
Right.
So,
Yeah, that's a little confusing all the time too.
yeah.
Very good point. That short form that you can use does have two types of restrictions. The first restriction is the total amount of income for the year. And as Bob said there, it's $50,000. If your club is bringing in $50,000 or less during the course of the year, then you can file that short form. But there's a second restriction on it too, and that's the amount of assets that you have. And I don't remember where that is, but I think it's 250,000. If your assets are greater than some amount, perhaps 250,000, then even if you didn't have enough income, you still have to report. Doesn't mean you have to pay anything. It just means you have to report, or you still are allowed to report that way. Not that you have to. If you don't qualify under that, then you've got to go fill out the full 990. That in my case runs about 50 pages. And I know that the Albuquerque Club has to do a full 990. The Santa Fe Club probably has to do a full 990. I've never asked about that. Oh, help me out. It's the club that runs the big store there north of Phoenix.
Carefree.
Carefree,
Oh,
thank you.
Carefree, yeah,
Yeah, I kept wanting to say Chandler, and I knew that was wrong, but it's Carefree.
yeah, the marketplace.
Carefree has to
We're
run
small potatoes for that.
a full 990, and I'm sure there's others. Phoenix may have to also, just based on what I know about Phoenix. So there are certain clubs that have to do it a little bit different way, but it's the same requirement. Any other questions from anybody? Any other comments from anybody?
Good job, Jim.
What do we do if we're finished? Do we leave the room, or what do we do? Oh, that was a help. Oh, look at this, Amy. Oh, she's throwing candy and stuff at me out of her funnel.
Gee, I'm gonna say goodnight, and I need to know a little more whiskey, and I'm gonna say goodnight, so been a pleasure.
Mary, one of your criterion for distinguish this year is finding ways to raise money for the admin account. That would be a perfect topic for Jim next year to discuss.
There you go.
Or Steve might have just volunteered. That's a harder thing to do, because you can't go beg the money from someone that wants a receipt necessarily. But there's some ways to do it. One of the ways that some clubs do it, that quite frankly our club used to, and COVID changed for everybody, and that is we owe Kiwanis International something in the neighborhood of $106, $108 every year in dues. That's all the Southwest District dues plus the Kiwanis dues that go up there to them. And anything you charge for dues in your club over that $100 and some odd, you can keep in your admin fund. And so once upon a time, our dues in the Albuquerque Club were $175, $185, something like that. And that $50 or $60 that we had that was over and above what we had to pay was part of the admin fund. Now,
Ooh.
that was at a time when we met for lunch and it didn't cost $25 for lunch. And so it might be a little harder to ask people to pay that these days, but that's what happened a lot. I think a lot of clubs did things like that until COVID. And suddenly COVID made things much more difficult for everybody. But that's one thing that a lot of clubs have done. And a lot of clubs run little games, if you will, happy dollars, split pot, things of that nature that they put in their admin accounts.
Mhm.
So there are ideas that you can come up with. Our club ran a numbers game at one point.
Mm.
And you literally, you played the lottery all the time by buying chances with a card, and then whatever the state lottery came up with for the date chosen was whatever the winning numbers were. So we didn't manage any of that, and you bought tickets, and we kept half of it, I think, and the other half of it was paid out to whoever had the right numbers.
Wow.
We did that for a few years and haven't done it in a long time.
Wow.
I think my Italian grandfather used to do that in Ohio.
Well, it might have been called a numbers game, all right. May not have worked
That sounds
exactly that
familiar.
same way.
Now, you guys didn't run from bar to bar getting numbers or anything like that, right?
Yeah. All right, well, if we don't have anything else, I see it's 8 o'clock. I don't have anything more to contribute to this thing. I thank all of you for coming and being a part of this. I had no idea whether I'd have anybody. I was happy when Mary came in there right off the bat and joined me. So thank you all for attending. Thank you for being a part of this. And if you have any questions somewhere in the future, please feel free to just give me a call and I'll try to do anything I can to help you out.
Thanks, Jim.
Jim, what is your phone number in case we need to get a hold of you?
I don't have that here that I can put it up, but it's 505-821-6292. And
All right,
that's
thank you very
my,
much. Very well done. Thank you much.
that's a landline right here at the house. So just, if I'm not here, leave a message.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Bye.
Anytime.
Bye.
Thank you all
Yeah,
for being
Jim,
here.
thank
Yeah,
you.
Jim.
Sure.
Thank
I'll
you.
see you in a couple of months.
Okay.
You know that.
I do. All right. Good night.
Thank
Good night. New break.